Without a doubt, Darth Vader is the most iconic villain in Star Wars, and really one of the most in popular culture in general. It takes a lot for even a character's breathing to be instantly recognizable, and being a part of a film's most iconic plot twist certainly helps. With this and much more cementing Star Wars as a cultural icon forever impacting the sci-fi genre. However, when George Lucas then sold the Lucasfilm company to Disney in the early 2010s, and with the announcement of the sequel trilogy shortly following, audiences would see Darth Vader succeeded by Ben Solo, the grandchild of Anakin Skywalker, turning to the dark under the moniker of Kylo Ren. Much would happen over the course of the sequel trilogy, mirroring the originals, with Kylo repeatedly hitting new peaks in power, leading many to question if he ever reached the heights of terror and strength once demonstrated by his ancestor. For the purposes of this video, we'll obviously be citing sources solely from the newly established Disney canon, meaning information released after April of 2014 only. This video, however, is going to be a first for the channel and a little different. With me today, I have my friend Moth.
Yo, thanks for bringing me on, Diego. I'm close to hitting 500,000 subs, so don't be afraid to, click the channel if you want to hear me yap about some more Star Wars.
So with Moth here today, what we'll be doing is reviewing both sides of the argument. Moth will go over the Vader stuff and I will be doing the Kylo stuff. Then we'll sort of bring our opinions in towards the end.
Darth Vader is a powerhouse within Star Wars and is often seen as near the pinnacle of power within the series. With this being said, he is still greatly underestimated. I'll be going over various canon statements throughout the series to help paint a picture of his true strength. George Lucas stated that Vader is around 80% of Palpatine's current strength in Return of the Jedi. This places Vader near the strength of Sidious and makes him comparable. Don't worry, I won't be trying to give Vader Sidious feats, as that would be disingenuous. It also should be noted that this is a Vader in what we should call his base state and not emotionally amped. This will be important later. From this statement, we can see that Vader is stronger than he has ever been and is similar to the power of Palpatine at this point. This is further backed up in Empire number 4 when Vader and Palpatine spar with one another and Palpatine calls off the session. We can see that they are similar in skill and possibly in power, or Vader may be ready to overpower Sidious in this instance, as Sidious does call off the session and Vader almost kills him until Sidious commands him to stop a second time. This is extremely significant because the first time they ever sparred, Sidious thrashed Vader and utterly humiliated him. Some people may see this as Vader obeying his master out of fear. Personally, I interpret this in a different way. According to this narrative statement, we can see that when Vader grabbed Sidious in Return of the Jedi, he took on the full brunt of his Force lightning. I'm not saying he tanked it, but in the movie, he does simply overpower Sidious and throws him down the reactor shaft, and Sidious is using his full power against him. This is a positive for multiple reasons. Referencing back to the Vader's base state, we can see that he is already comparable to Sidious, and that when emotionally triggered, he was able to match and overpower Sidious in order to kill him. There's also a chance that you can attribute Vader's death to his suit malfunctioning due to Sidious's lightning, but I'll leave that for you to decide. Now, with all the power of Vader being established, I can get into arguments for Vader beating Kylo. According to the Force Awakens head-to-head book, we can see that Episode 5 Luke would lose to Kylo. However, reading the description of this fight, it is not a win con for Kylo. We can see this is not a one-sided slaughter, but more of an intense duel. This is important because of this version of Luke was basically manhandled by a weaker Vader who was also conflicted. We also know when a character in Star Wars is conflicted, they're typically nerfed, as we see in the Obi-Wan and Anakin fight on Mustafar, Return of the Jedi fight with Vader and Luke. There are also further implications that Vader is stronger than Kylo that we see in the movie. When Rey reads Kylo's mind, she says he's afraid he'll never be as strong as Vader. Kylo knows he isn't as strong as Vader, as he has access to Force psychometry. To note, with him having access to Vader's helmet and skull, he has a direct insight to see Vader's max power and still admit inferiority, even as when both him and Rey fight Sidious, they still initially lose until Rey receives an amp. The icing on the cake to all of this is that Sidious himself admits that Kylo is nowhere near the worthiness of Vader in terms of being an apprentice and sharing the power of the dark side. As we know, Sidious is a being who respects nothing but strength and power. This statement from Sidious himself also just outright says that Vader was his strongest apprentice.
Just as his grandfather before him, Ben Solo was a Jedi apprentice boasting much promise under the tutelage of his uncle Luke Skywalker, champion of the Rebel Alliance and founder of the New Jedi Order. However, with the influence of Snoke, who is essentially a puppet of Sidious, Ben would have his fears played upon and turned against the New Jedi Order and converted to the dark side as Kylo Ren, becoming a weapon of the First Order under Supreme Leader Snoke in the same vein as his ancestor once was for Sidious in the Empire before. There are a couple things imperative for us to establish early on, one being that Sidious and Snoke are one and the same. In the Star Wars Secrets of the Sith book narrated from his perspective, Sidious details how he took control of the First Order through Snoke, but additionally takes credit for turning Ben Solo to the dark side as his weapon as well. Later stating in The Rise of Skywalker, "My boy, I made Snoke. I have been every voice you have ever heard inside your head," which includes the likes of both Vader and Snoke once again, whose death solidifies the Emperor's involvement as a stone-cold fact. Considering that this is the case, any guide statements or those coming from Snoke directly as it pertains to his belief regarding Kylo's ability would naturally reflect those of Sidious as well. It is also important to note that Kylo is not a Sith or Sith Lord in any capacity. Not only does he not carry the Darth title carried on throughout the Rule of Two, but the Sith were eliminated with the death of both Vader and Sidious in Return of the Jedi. This will be more so important later down the line, but even early on at the time of Episode 7 The Force Awakens, Kylo has already made quite the name for himself. Just a year prior, he manages to subdue the Benathi, an alien race looking to expand their influence, wiping out life on other planets where Vader previously could not. Some doubt Kylo's performance as he fails to mind trick the King Kristoff. However, the mind trick has never been a matter of power, instead purely dependent on if the target has a weak mind. The last living stormtrooper to fight at Vader's side during the initial conflict likewise advises Kylo, stating that Vader and his armies fought and killed thousands to escape, but he did not fight their god, the Zillo Beast. Kylo takes this as a direct challenge and leaps into the Zillo Beast's stomach to tear it open from the inside. The stormtrooper then declares Kylo the winner over his grandfather, while the comic very clearly draws parallels between the two. However, there could be explanations and context given to this, such as Vader not attempting the attack from the inside like Kylo previously, so to what degree this places Kylo over Vader, if at all, is somewhat debatable. Be that as it may, Kylo around this period has still more than proven himself as a valuable weapon of the First Order, being Snoke's most gifted pupil, yet still boasting so much promise. Through Kylo's veins runs the bloodline of the most powerful Jedi and Sith, a focal point of both light and dark side ability that in Snoke's eyes make Kylo into the ideal embodiment of the Force. A key component of Kylo or even his prior self as Ben Solo is his immense potential. During his time as a Padawan, Luke firmly believed that Ben had the capacity to one day rival him. This great potential in fact caused Kylo's betrayal of the new Jedi Order, as the darkness Luke had sensed in his nephew promised death, pain, and destruction beyond what he had ever imagined, and never seeing raw strength like Ben's before. This is further elaborated on by Snoke, who had consistently foreseen the potential to become the next Vader within Kylo, who aims to succeed where Vader and his sentimentality once failed. It could be said that Kylo's greatest weakness is not only the occasional pulls back to the light that leave him conflicted like his ancestor once was, but his subservience to Snoke as well. Something that coincides with Kylo's capacity to become the next Vader is the fact that Snoke has been covertly testing Kylo's capacity to inherit the legacy of the Sith. This is more so a narrative argument for Kylo, but something we should go more in depth about is the Sith and how their order functions in terms of lineage. 1,000 years ago, before the events of A New Hope, the sheer lust for power that bred disunion among the Sith led to their near destruction at the hands of the Jedi amidst a conflict on Ruusan. As the sole Sith survivor of the conflict, Darth Ben would seek to rebirth their order with the Rule of Two, a statute that ensured the Sith would go stronger by harnessing the dark side energy throughout the galaxy in just two individuals, a master who embodies the power, followed by an apprentice who seeks and craves it. Once the apprentice then grows to a level that rivals or exceeds his master, he overthrows him and takes the dark side power for himself. While Kylo and Snoke once again are not Sith Lords, the statements surrounding Snoke's death at Kylo's hands put things into a different perspective, declaring it to be an action worthy of the Rule of Two, or that Kylo now has the capacity to inherit the legacy of the Sith, which is language often used when describing a Sith apprentice succeeding his master. To speak plainly, Kylo's newfound unprecedented power after killing Snoke, representing his ability to inherit the Sith legacy, likely means that if placed within the Sith Order, he is now strong enough to directly succeed Darth Sidious and Vader in the Rule of Two upon their deaths in Episode 6 Return of the Jedi. This is further elaborated on by guidebook excerpts, declaring that Kylo in Episode 9 views himself as carrying on the tradition left behind by his grandfather, completely submitting to the dark side after freeing himself from the chains of Snoke in a manner that frightens the Supreme Council, with Luke additionally believing when they meet again that Kylo has in fact attained what he had once sensed in him, a raw power that he hadn't seen since that of Darth Vader's. This very moment in Kylo's development between Episodes 8 and 9 is currently being explored at time of recording in the Star Wars Legacy of Vader comic series, where Kylo visits sites of Vader's past, retracing his grandfather's steps in order to fully grasp what it means to overcome the past. Along the way, we've watched Kylo undergo tasks like running an all-out assault on Naboo and tracking down one of the last Order 66 survivors, up until the penultimate issue 11, where in the face of Vader's former servant, Kylo declares that he is already everything he needs to be. bow on everything, I believe it's a little difficult to argue in Kylo as he appears in episode 7, given that he himself still holds some insecurities about his place over Vader. However, as the trilogy continues, Kylo very clearly reaches the power Luke and Snoke had foreseen in him, and it could still be debated that it may not be enough when all is said and done. I can realistically see arguments for both, but I feel as if the narrative of the films very clearly set Kylo up after Snoke's death to reach his peak, envisioned by mentors of his past, and there may be even more to learn in the final issue of the Legacy of Vader series.
Going off of what Diego says, it's pretty clear that Kylo probably does lose in episode 7, and even though there aren't as many arguments for Vader going into episodes 8 and 9, there are still a few that could be used to compose a compelling argument. I personally can see it going either way in certain scenarios, but I personally feel that Vader wins more times than not.
That's going to be about all we have for you today. Again, be sure to check out Moth. He makes videos pretty similar to mine and also makes plenty of Star Wars content. I myself may make more Star Wars content in the future, so look out for that, or really check out anything else on my channel that may catch your eye. Subscribe for free to be notified about what I get up to in the future, such as when I upload or stream. Like this video to support both the channel and myself, as well as let me know that this is the type of content you want to see. Comment down below if I missed anything or with any suggestions you may have for the future. Thank you all for watching and have a great rest of your day.